Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Ruben Espinosa, and I am here to interrupt your lunch. So, by all means, you all can please keep eating, but I'm going to ask you to stop talking, though. All right. I'm not sure if you all know this, but I'm the first SAA president to be serving the new 2-year term under the revised Constitution. Yeah. But because of that, I had a host of jokes prepared about, Mexicans needing to work twice as hard, or Mexican taking on the jobs that nobody else wants, or Mexicans coming here and stealing your jobs twice. The sad reality is that I knew I would be in the unenviable position of preparing not just one, but 2 presidential addresses. And now you have to come to terms with the fact that you'll be hearing from me again next year. The silver lining in all of this, at least for me, is that if I fail miserably in today's talk, I get another chance next year. So I struggled with how to go about preparing for twin talks. My friends were ready with advice. Ayana suggested that I deliver today's talk in Spanish and say, if you want to hear the English version, come to next year's SAA, or Prima Dos. Yeah. Others thought I should end today's talk with a cliffhanger. Again, with the idea that you'd come to Denver to hear the rest of it. But I have enough self-awareness to know that I'm just not that interesting, so you won't necessarily come. So I settled on a different strategy. I thought maybe this year I'll look forward, and next year will offer me the opportunity to reflect. I'll admit, though, this is a really, really difficult time for us to be looking forward. It's a moment of serious uncertainty, a moment where we are being stripped of our civil rights, and indeed, for some of us, of our dignity. And I know that the gravity of this might feel new, but even if it feels new, feels different, it isn't. In her 1994 book, Teaching to Transgress, Bell Hooks considers Martin Luther King Jr.'s attention to a citizenship that flounders in the face of moral and spiritual bankruptcy. Writing in the mid-90s, or the late 20th century, as my students like to say, much to my Gen X dismay, Hooks says, and I quote, "Today we live in the midst of that floundering. We live in chaos, uncertain about the possibility of building and sustaining community. The public figures who speak the most to us about a return to old-fashioned values embody the evils King describes." Written nearly 30 years after Dr. King and 30 years before us today, Hooks' words still resonate and register the moral bankruptcy that many of us in this nation and many of this nation's citizens are willing to overlook, willing to embrace even. And this moment affects all of us. Chaos abounds, and the idea of building and sustaining community feels fraught. The uncertainty and evil are not new. Appalling, urgent, and amplified, yes, but they're not new. Still, I can't help but feel apprehensive about looking forward in this moment when we are constantly forced to make sense of the present, forced to manage and navigate the chaos and the floundering of our elected officials, our administrators, our neighbors, our colleagues, even our friends and family amid that chaos. But it is vital that we do look forward, for ourselves and for the communities to which we belong. For us here, it is vital that we take the time to imagine this community, our SAA community, beyond this moment. It's vital that we ask, what will the SAA look like beyond 2025? The answer to that question will depend on us, on both our individual and our collective efforts. Obviously, there are powerful entities and forces working against us, and those forces are looking to silence us, to render us inconsequential. The humanities in crisis narrative dominates op-ed after op-ed. The value of college degrees is being heavily scrutinized. Funding cuts to higher education, indeed higher education, and research are real. English departments are diminishing, jobs are evaporating, even performances of Shakespeare are shrinking. I bet you didn't think this talk was going to be so uplifting, did you? I promise we'll get there. The truth is, we saw this coming even before the current crisis. The question is then, how will we adjust? How do we adjust? Do we adjust? If there is a tentativeness in rephrasing the question, it is because I know the answer is yes, but like many, I know how difficult it can be to enact the kind of change that we need. I believe that this is a moment when we must recalibrate our commitment to this organization, to this field, to our research, to this community, and to ourselves. In closing her stunning poem, What If?, Claudia Rankin considers the age-old call for change and writes, "What if what I want from you is new, newly made, a new sentence in response to all my questions, a swerve in our relation and the words that carry us, the care that carries. I am here without the shrug, attempting to understand how what I want and what I want from you run parallel." In this moment we're in this crisis, there's an opportunity for us to craft a new sentence. In Shakespeare, in early modern literature, we are offered opportunities to engage with the past so as to imagine a different future. And chalk it up to the Chicano in me who longs for and believes in that transformation, for justice defining that imagined future. But I want to seize this opportunity. Sitting in the pressures of the present, these imaginings aren't necessarily easy. A new sentence isn't easy. Committing to the idea of something newly made isn't easy. And I know there's a John Donne reference to deploy here, but I think going into Trinitarian desire and the hypostatic union is going to take me off my game, so I totally resisted. What I want to say today is that it might not be easy, but we need to try, we need to oppose, and we need to do it collectively. Claudia Rankin's attention to the care that carries points us in the right direction. We can be so much more. We all know that this profession is a grind. From early on, we normalize overworking ourselves. We are encouraged to be individualistic, to compete for resources, to look first to ourselves and to our successes. Buying into that is exhausting and isolating, and continuing along this same tired path is just not feasible. I'm going to be honest with you. I used to feel so uneasy when coming to the SAA for these very reasons. It felt overwhelming. In my first years attending the SAA, walking around the opening reception felt like a lonely nightmare. And this event, don't get me started. Sometime later, I was chatting with Peter Erickson somewhere in the halls shortly before the luncheon was set to begin. As people began making their way to the luncheon, Peter looked at me and said, "I always feel so awkward at these things. Would you mind if I sat with you?" If you know Peter, you know that this gesture fully captures him. A perfect balance of brilliance, humility, and genuine generosity. I knew in that moment that he likely sensed my apprehension of entering a room like this and feeling invisible. He made sure that I didn't feel invisible and that I wasn't alone. Over the years, many of you have made sure I feel seen, and that isn't lost on me. From where I stand, and believe me, I know I wouldn't be standing up here without the support of so many of you, and I am incredibly grateful for that. From where I stand, fostering an ethos of inclusivity and sustained support for each other are critical as we look to the future of the SAA. These have become core values of this organization, but they are values that were not easy to cultivate. It took concerted effort by members who knew that if they wanted a vibrant, diverse membership, they needed to work toward that deliberately and with courage. To maintain these values, the buy-in needs to be wholesale, because those very values are being attacked across the board in this nation. Of late, there has been a tendency for institutions and individuals to embrace the practice of anticipatory obedience. I don't think that is the answer. Obedience cannot be the answer. The stakes are simply too high. It is a boldness, I think it is a boldness of bell hooks that we need. We need, as she says, and I quote, to labor for freedom, demand of ourselves and our comrades, an openness of mind and heart that allows us to face reality even as we collectively imagine ways to move beyond boundaries, to transgress. No, obedience is not the answer. We must find ways to transgress. This is a moment when all of us need to hold each other up. And I think this conference reflects that in this community. If we work collectively, we can face the chaos and keep from floundering. I'm borrowing heavily here from many of the primary proponents of early modern critical race studies, people for whom I have a deep respect and friendship, with Peter Erickson among them. They emphasize the strength of collective efforts when strategizing to build systems of support and advocacy, to break through the gatekeeping of those who sought to censor us. They understood the power of solidarity. On a large scale now, we are all feeling the pressures to capitulate to oppressive structures, and their goal is to make us feel apprehensive, to obsess over our precarity without focusing on the fight. But look around you. Many of your friends and colleagues are confronting an existential threat. Immigrants are vilified, DEI is under attack, queer and trans rights are under attack, environmental justice is under attack, academic freedom is under attack, xenophobia, misogyny, and fascism fester. It's enough to make the work we do feel irrelevant in these times. But it just isn't. We know this. Statistically, humanities majors vote in greater numbers than any other majors. It's no coincidence, then, that the value of the humanities has been maligned, that its utility is so often questioned so as to suggest that a humanities degree is inconsequential. And in many ways, that narrative is working. We need to flip the script. I know that task can feel monumental, especially as we have to navigate our way through the current injuries. But I do think that as we think about the SAA beyond 2025, as we think about how we can recalibrate, we should also be thinking through our individual investments in our teaching, our research, the committees on which we serve, our mentorship, the communities we build, and that we do so with a clear sense of what the stakes are, with care, with support, and with solidarity in mind. What if we did that? What if we all committed to that for our colleagues, for our students, and for ourselves? Of late, I've been thinking about the way I arrived here, wondering what really drew me to Shakespeare. And no, I did not aspire to be the president of this organization as a young boy. I was more interested in Chespirito than I was in Shakespeare. I knew like two of you would get that joke, so I was ready for it not to land. All right. I think one of the things I found most attractive in Shakespeare early on were the subtle moments of subversion. Indeed, no end to subversion, especially for us. I found meaning in Ophelia's response after Laertes's paternalistic advice when she says, "Do not as some ungracious pastors do," or of Cordelia confidently refusing to play along with Lear's imperiousness by vocalizing, "Nothing, my lord." Aaron imperviously asking, "Is black so base a hue?" Or, and perhaps most germane to our present moment, of Macduff taking a beat in a moment that presents to him the horror and the tyranny and violence in his world to say, "I must also feel it as a man." I found in those cultural products of the past openings to question the world that I inherited and to question the history that still tries to define me. In addressing the history of Shakespeare and early modern England, James Baldwin writes, "It is said that his time was easier than ours, but I doubt it. No time can be easy if one is living through it." What Baldwin felt he shared with Shakespeare was a responsibility as a poet to bear witness, however heavy that which he witnessed might be. We too are bearing witness, and in our present chaos, in this crisis, we have the opportunity to be on the right side of history. And I guess that is what my appeal is today. Be on the right side of history. No, none of it is easy, but when we feel the weight of this, we then need to put our righteous anger to good use. I'm not quite sure what we are supposed to offer in these speeches. We sometimes honor, we sometimes thank, we sometimes seek to make others laugh. We're sometimes tasked to ask for money. By the way, please scan those QR codes and give generously. As I try to make sense of this moment, I don't take lightly my role as a steward of this organization. I'm grateful for this, mostly because I get to work and think alongside a host of brilliant people in these trying times. It's far easier to endeavor to write a new sentence together with you than it is alone. I want to listen earnestly to your ideas. I want to work deliberately with you to forge a way forward. I don't want to shrug. I too want to ask, what if? Because I guess what I'm saying is that looking to the future of the SAA is looking to the future of the humanities, of higher education, of our democracy, and indeed of our ethical responsibility to each other. I've been fortunate to be a part of a movement within our field that fought, advocated, fostered, and is sustaining real commitment to diversity, to inclusion, and to an ethics of hospitality. What I have learned in that fight is that change is possible, but only if we work collectively. Those efforts cannot stall, and we cannot flounder. The eagerness by many to embrace anticipatory capitulation tells us everything we need to know about the gravity of this fight. As I look around this room, I have to say that I like our odds. Thank you sincerely for entrusting me on this path with you. And if you want to hear the Spanish version of today's talk, oprima dos. Thank you.